of his disciples said to him, "Look, teacher, what large stones and what large buildings." Then Jesus asked him, "Do you see these great buildings? Not one stone will be left here upon another, all will be thrown down." When he was sitting on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple, Peter, James, John, and Andrew asked him privately, "Tell us, when will this be? And what will be the sign that all these things are about to be accomplished?" Then Jesus began to say to them, "Beware that no one leads you astray. Many will come in my name and say, 'I am he,' and they will lead many astray. When you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be alarmed. This must take place, but the end is still to come. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places, there will be famine. This is but the beginning of the birth pangs." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ. In the midst of the drama of predictions of the revered and glorious Second Temple in Jerusalem coming down, amidst Jesus' warnings about false prophets and conflict and famine, the end coming, we might miss one or two small things. One of those is the presence of Andrew with the three disciples who often seem to be an executive committee among Jesus' companions, accompanying him on certain significant occasions when the others are left behind. But here is Andrew, the saint that we celebrate on this day. Andrew has few mentions in the Gospels, yet he played a key role in the very beginning of Jesus' ministry. He is the one who just one day after Jesus' baptism at the Jordan River heard John the Baptist's testimony to his witness of that Holy Spirit descending upon Jesus. Andrew not only followed after Jesus, but stayed with him, and then went out to bring back his brother, Simon Peter. That initial act and that invitation might have been the small spark that set off the whole Jesus movement. But here we are today with Andrew and the others, not at the beginning of Jesus' earthly ministry, but almost at its end. Jesus has made his triumphant entrance into Jerusalem at this point and is teaching the last of his lessons to those who will soon need to carry on. They have come to this magnificent temple, the very center of their Jewish faith, for one of their holy festivals. They listened as Jesus critiqued the self-important scribes who walked around in their long robes seeking recognition and praying long prayers to show their piety. They watched as a destitute widow, apparently not cared for as the Jewish law required, gave everything she had to the temple treasury, though she was probably being exploited by the temple system. And now, in today's reading, they hear Jesus predicting that that temple itself will soon crumble to the ground. A 400-year-old architectural wonder of massive rocks so heavy that they needed no mortar to hold them in place. This magnificent place refurbished by Herod, with so much gold on the stone walls that they dazzled and nearly blinded those who approached in the sunlight. And it is that magnificent place that will fall. And with these rocks, the entire institution of the faith as they knew it would change. No longer centered in one single place of pilgrimage and sacrifice, the tradition will need to remake itself into the rabbinic Judaism that is more like we know today. And of course, alongside will grow the Jesus movement, the Christian faith that we have inherited. Now, it is not exactly easy to preach about temples crumbling and buildings falling down in this place where we are so greatly enjoying our new parish house built upon ancient rocks. As we have just begun to discover its possibilities for our community of faith, the possibilities in the midst of newness that tends, or in the midst of news, national news, that tends not to be so positive in the broader world of the Christian church. Several of us have just returned from our annual diocesan convention, where 118 of our 123 congregations gathered with our bishop to worship, to learn, to do the work of this church. As has been true of every year in recent memory, we have heard statistics that we don't want to hear. In both our keynote speaker's address and in Bishop Lee's sermon, we heard of continuing trends where church and religion are not significant parts of people's lives, or where they are, that the faith may not be at the center of their church participation. Some seem to come to church for reasons other than faith in God. Bishop Lee quoted our presiding bishop, who said, "Apart from Jesus, we're just a nice association of mostly nice people." Bishop Lee prefers to say it this way: "We are sort of a Rotary International with hymns." Of course, and I must say, fortunately, at convention, we are not any longer dwelling on the declining numbers. We're not so much wringing our hands in despair, at least not as much as we might have been 10 or so years ago. I hope, we are finally coming to the realization that we are feeling birth pangs of some kind of new creation of church. Jesus talked of birth pangs just beginning and an end coming. While some traditions focus on the apocalyptic aspects of his words, the end times of the judgment, perhaps he was predicting something new. Birth pains, labor pains that, though they lead to a kind of an end, also signal a new beginning, new life, a joy so intense as to blot out the pain and the discomfort. For the pain and discomfort are real, but the reward is great. Some things we have come to rely on must end in order that we speak to today's people, to today's world. As our keynote speaker, Ray Suarez, noted journalist, lifelong Episcopalian, and writer, reminded us, the churches of the 1950s were largely filled because of social norms and extended family expectations. Though those days are gone forever, there is much promise in those, even if smaller numbers, who are coming now for very different reasons, because they want to be here, not because they want grandma to be happy. Suarez challenged us to find ways to speak to those who are seeking ways to survive and thrive in our complex and difficult world today, and says that it's clear. We must be clear about who we are, and we must be unafraid to share that. For Bishop Lee, it is about recovering or discovering our nerve. We fear sharing our faith with others, talking about Jesus, telling stories about something that is bigger than ourselves, that might sustain us in our complicated and sometimes painful existence. This is not a trivial matter. It's a matter of life and death. And I'm not talking about survival of the church just for the sake of the institution or just for being part of a group of nice and compatible people. I'm talking about saving the church's soul and our souls, believing that we have something that is worth sharing with others, for there is a real and compelling need for God in this day, for spiritual health in the church, but also in saving the world, in participating step by step toward the realm of God, not just in the next life, but right here, right now. Some are repurposing, some even closing. Just think about this. Grace Episcopal Church in Galena, Illinois, has taken a bold step, building a step that has hope writ large. So we must not make the mistake of hunkering down in our beautiful and comfortable place, congratulating ourselves for what we have done. Well, we can do that for a little bit. We can do that, but not only that. Going forward, we must constantly remind ourselves that it is just the beginning of something new. Hear now the closing words of Bishop Lee's sermon yesterday. He said, "So I've got a charge for us, church. Let's recover or discover our nerve, our confidence that God has given us a way of being Christian, a way of following Christ that leads to life, a way of living not for ourselves alone, but for the one who died for us and was raised again, a way of loving and giving and caring for a world that seems bent on suicide. I think that's the mission of God, that God has chosen of all creatures, you and me. I do believe I'd have chosen someone else, but God has chosen, for some reason, us to be partners in God's project of saving this world from self-destruction." He goes on, "Let us rediscover the wild, unprovable, too good to be true proclamation that Jesus Christ is alive and will not leave us comfortless. Whether you think you're a skeptical cynic," these are categories in a study that he quoted, "whether you think you're a skeptical cynic or an uncertain optimist or a devout believer, do not be afraid to share in whatever ways are natural for you that somehow, in some mysterious way, you have found in the company of the church something that's worth sharing. Maybe even in ways and for reasons you do not quite understand. Because here's the truth that I believe with everything I've got. You did not choose this, not any more than you chose to be born. God chose you. Jesus Christ has chosen us, all of us, to be his own. The risen Jesus, dear friends, is not absent, either from the church or from the world. And that is the best news there could ever be." Amen. Amen.